Hello, welcome to the Outsmart Overeating Podcast. I'm Leslie Hooper, accompanied alongside shit. Let's try that again. Dexter, lay down. Hello, I'm Leslie Hooper, and I have my co-coach, Steph Miramontes, alongside me today, and we're going to be discussing... No, I don't like that either. Hey, can you just chill for a second? Hello, and welcome to the Outsmart Overeating Podcast. I'm Leslie Hooper, and I'm accompanied by Coach Steph Miramontes. Today, we're going to be talking about how to change your beliefs and stick to your goals, your habits for good, because the reality is if you can't be consistent, then it will never become a habit. And if it can't become a habit, then this is never going to be weight loss that you can maintain. So, Steph, today I want to first just announce that you and I are going to be hosting an upcoming live training. We're going to be pulling back the curtain to reveal what we provide in the Unstuffed program, the 3 pillars for lifelong weight loss. That's going to be on Thursday, April 18th at 1 p.m. Central. So even if you can't attend live, I absolutely would encourage you to register because there is going to be a recording available for you. I'm going to put that in the show notes so you can get the details there, but you don't want to miss that. If this podcast has been resonating with you, if you've been finding the message helpful, absolutely get on the books for that. All right, Steph. So something that we do talk about in the Unstuffed program with our clients, our newest clients in particular, is this idea of creating identity-based habits. Now, the idea is that the beliefs you have about yourself can drive your long-term behavior. So sometimes we might be able to trick ourselves into going to the gym or eating healthy once or twice or for a week or two. But if you don't shift that underlying identity, then it can be really difficult to stick with our long-term changes. And I know this is something that we really have to help our clients redefine, is their identity coming into the program. Because if you've been a long time yo-yo dieter and you've struggled to maintain your weight loss, chances are there is a subconscious belief somewhere that's like, I don't know if I can sustain this, or I've never been able to maintain this, or we feel like we're always just on the brink of an overeat, or the wheels are about to fall off, right? We've been here many times before, or maybe we haven't really been able to get here at all. And that's why, again, subconsciously, we might have a belief that it's our slow metabolism, or it's, I don't know, we're not disciplined enough, things of that nature.
I definitely fell victim to the slow metabolism belief. And what I talk to clients about pretty often is that we don't operate from the desire to reach our goals. We operate from our beliefs that we have about ourselves. And yeah, you can use some grit, you can buckle down, you can do all the things to get the process started for weight loss, for eating healthier, for creating these better habits. But at the first turn of events, the first hard day, the first vacation, the first time that things start to feel a little shifty, that belief of the slow metabolism, or that you can't lose weight, or that weight loss is miserable, or you have to be deprived, or have like this ironclad willpower, discipline, grit, whatever, in order to do this. As soon as you have that hard day, those beliefs rise to the surface, and that's what you operate from. You get defeated. You feel like it is a path already made for you. And so that's when you end up sabotaging yourself. And that's why it's so hard to be consistent. And the real reason it's so difficult is because it's sinister. It's locked into your subconscious. You can't really hear it until you hear it. You can't see what you're operating from, because you just think you're a failure. You're just telling yourself, here I go again. This is me again. I always do this. See, this diet didn't work. See, this was just too hard. It's too much. I don't have any family support and things like that. And I always have so much compassion and empathy for our clients that go through this. And I actually believe that we talk a lot about it with our newer clients, but I think we also address this on a deeper level with our clients that are more mature in the programs, because you have to overcome one set of beliefs, and then you build up some confidence and things like that. And then a new set starts to surface, and then a new set starts to surface, because we have collected these beliefs about ourselves, these identities, from birth. We picked them up from all sorts of garage sales in our lives, our parents and our aunts and uncles and our peers in school and the media and all the things.
So true. Weekly, when I'm reviewing some client email check-ins, their language towards the end of the program is drastically different, because now they're talking about their future selves, and that comes up over and over and over again. So that tells me that they are future focused and oriented to changing their identity. That's what they're working towards. When people begin a weight loss program, they tend to focus on those outcome-based goals. They say things like, well, I want to lose 20 pounds. But that is a surface level change. And it doesn't really get to the root behavior, which is your identity is ultimately what is driven by our belief about ourselves and what is possible. So it really brings up the question of like, okay, well, if identity-based habits are so important, then how's our identity even formed? How do we even acquire this identity? And how do we create a new one? And so, simply put, our identity comes from our habits, right? We weren't born this way. We didn't come out of the womb with like these predetermined beliefs about ourselves. Every belief that we have about ourselves is learned through a conditioned kind of like experience, I guess. So over time, and I've often shared this as an example on the podcast, is like, if we're new to a sport like soccer, if we just kick the ball around in the backyard occasionally, we don't really think of ourselves as a soccer player. We're not playing in a league. We're not in a community. We're just kind of kicking the ball around. Whereas if we are immersing ourselves in the culture and we are practicing consistently and we are committed to getting better and showing up day after day, week after week, month after month, and we join a league and we get immersed into that, then of course over time we start to identify ourselves as a soccer player, or an artist. Might not think that they're an artist initially, but the more that they draw, the more people give them positive reinforcement, then now they start to take on that identity, right? So the more we kind of repeat a behavior, the more we reinforce that belief and that behavior essentially, and then it becomes a habit. And habits, as we know, provide consistency. What we do repetitively becomes a part of our identity.
So you said simply put, but I don't feel like that was very simple. So,
well, I just meant the following sentence.
So I'm just going to throw this out there. Your identity is who you believe yourself to be. And then you reinforce who you believe yourself to be through your habits and behaviors, which then strengthens that identity. And so when you try to change something behaviorally, the identity that you have built fights you. It butts up against that change. So if you're going to try to build some new healthy habits and your identity is, well, my family is just a bunch of big eaters. We just have big appetites, but you want to eat a little less and lose some weight, then as soon as you serve yourself what might be a reasonable portion on your plate, that identity of a big eater is going to go, what the hell, man? Where's the rest of the food? We're a big eater. What are you going to do? You're going to eat like this little hamburger? What are you talking about? Why aren't you ordering the king size hamburger and the fries and like supersize it while you're at it kind of thing? It's going to tell you it's not enough, not for you, because you're a big eater, like the rest of your family. And so that is what we're really up against here. Not that this is not the amount of food that will satisfy me, not that this is the amount of food that I need or that will support my goals and make me feel good, but this is the amount of food that completely and totally goes against what I believe myself to be capable of and what I believe myself to need, because I have this underlying belief. So I don't know if that was any simpler, but that is kind of the identity piece. It's like, let's try to change. Cool. Until you butt up against who you think you are. And that is what makes it so much more difficult until you know. Once you know, you can work on it.
I will say that because we've had the pleasure of helping over 2,500 emotional binge and compulsive overeaters work through this, we do tend to see a pattern in their subconscious beliefs about themselves and why they've not been able to follow through or remain consistent enough for the habits to quote unquote stick. And so we talk about with our clients, they're kind of three core beliefs that keep them struggling. And I just want to briefly mention them. I don't necessarily want to expand on all of them right now because that's what the program is for. And this podcast episode would turn into an hour-long show, and we don't have that kind of time. But I do want to just highlight so our listeners may be able to identify themselves in one of those three, or maybe all three. And so deep down, when you've really been struggling at weight loss for a long period of time, there's a good chance that you don't think it's actually possible. You don't believe it. You also, second one here is you don't think you deserve it. That one's a little more sneaky for people, right? And then the third I will mention here is some of us out here are not really individuals to take personal responsibility. So maybe one way of saying it is very good excuse makers and always kind of got these external circumstances that they are disempowered to change, like to use your example about the family dynamic stuff where, my family, we're just a bunch of big eaters. And so this is who we are. And when we get together, there's just a lot of food and the people pleasing element comes on, and we have the food pushers coming in, right? So it's kind of always about other aspects of our life outside of us that contribute to our overeating. It's not necessarily us taking personal responsibility and acknowledging, hey, you know what? I'm in control here. I have the ability to make a different decision. And I get it. These are really hard things to change, especially if you don't see them. And so we have to bring, again, these subconscious beliefs to the forefront. And I just had this conversation with a client yesterday because she goes, I just realized why I continue to self-sabotage. Why? And she goes, I fear failure. I've failed at this so many times that anytime I start building momentum and I build and build and build and start seeing progress and I'm experiencing physical changes, the first thing I do is get in my own way, prevent myself from achieving that success. And I know you see that all the time in our clients too, Steph.
In myself. That's been my story my entire life. And it's something that I still experience in other areas of my life. If I see some success, if I get rolling on something, what happens if I run out of steam? What happens if I can't keep it up? And then I'm double disappointed because I allowed myself to feel success before landing face first in a pile of cow shit. Like, that's no good.
Quite literally in your neck of the woods.
So I understand the experience. It's something that I've dealt with many times. The benefit is it's not that those experiences ever really go away, right? We are human. We can change our beliefs, we can change our identity, but the experience of being a human being is that certain things just keep showing in different areas. They reform, they change. We have so many different opportunities to overcome who we are and break the habit of being ourselves, basically. And so you never completely stop growing, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. But the benefit that I have now is that I get to see it. I'm not just walking around with a blindfold on thinking that life is throwing things at me and I'm just hoping to dodge. Instead, I'm like, ooh, here I am in my pattern. I noticed this. I can work on it. It's the most empowering thing in the world to be able to have either the ability to see it for yourself or have someone highlight it for you and go, wow, I actually have some control over this. I can do something about this. I don't have to stay stuck. It's amazing.
Well, and that's the thing about habits. They're so powerful and they're obviously subconscious. That's both the beautiful and terrifying thing about it is we have to bring that to our awareness before we can actually change it. And so this is why it is helpful to take inventory. And this is, I guess, one way that we do this in the Unstuffed program is by creating an environment for our clients to observe their habits, track them, and observe the thoughts and feelings that come up in between the action part of the habit, which, as you know, big part of the work that we do is the psychological piece, those cravings, those urges. How are you acting on them? What are you thinking about them? Because the thought is what's going to drive the action. And so we have to have that awareness before we can actually execute it. And each habit, I think, teaches us something about ourselves in a way to trust ourselves. And I think this is the beauty also of having like a step-by-step process, something to focus on, a framework, something that we are following, because again, it does reinforce a sense of accomplishment. I do like box checking to a degree. I do like seeing success add up and my efforts paying off. And so that is one benefit that I think we offer our clients in the beginning is we're so used to having that structure and that framework and tracking our behavior with whether it's calorie counting, meal plans, food scales. So we still have to have some semblance of a framework and direction laid out, mapped out for us step by step till we learn how to become a different person. Because if we just spring out of bed and say, you know what, every time I work out, like now I'm going to take on this identity of being like an athletic person, like that's not going to happen until you do it consistently over a period of time. And you need to collect more and more and more evidence for that. And then the story for yourself will start to change. So having the habits of a quote unquote naturally thin person really helps our clients follow that pathway and take on that identity because they're proving it to themselves day by day, meal by meal, step by step over the course of several weeks, months, and then years. And that's how we get to becoming a different person, both through your identity, but also through your habits, and can maintain that consistency, right? So the habits that you're cultivating are obviously those of someone who is not struggling with weight loss, because the identity isn't, I'm a dieter. It is, I am a successful 5%er. I'm somebody who has lost weight and kept it off long-term forever. But it's a process to develop that belief, right?
100%. So to use the sort of healthy eating habits example, you start out being someone that says, I just wish I had better habits. I wish I ate healthier. And then you start trying some things and you say something like, I'm working on building some healthy habits. And then over time you say, I have healthy eating habits. And then you're like, I'm a healthy eater. I just eat healthy. That's the difference. It's very different to say, I'm building healthy eating habits or I have some healthy meals, something like that, to I'm just a healthy eater. That is describing who you are. And it's like, I'm just not an overeater. that describes who you are. And then that doesn't mean you never overeat again. It just means that when you do, because it butts up against this new identity that you have, that I'm just not an overeater, all of a sudden you have the opposite thing going for you than the example we used before, where it's just like, well, this isn't enough food. Now it's like, oh my gosh, what did you do? You're not an overeater. Why did you do this? This is so uncomfortable. What the hell? Like, what's up with this? And your brain's criticizing you on the other side of it. We never get rid of our inner critic, by the way. But now it's having your back instead of trying to sabotage you. And so it's just really interesting to watch that evolution in your own brain and in the people around you. And I bet anyone listening to this podcast, understanding the concept of identity and beliefs and how that shows up and how they operate, can observe maybe people in their friend circles, people in their families, people around them going, oh, this is why we are how we are. I see. Okay, good to know. It's fascinating and so helpful.
Well, one thing I appreciate that you just brought up is the kind of an all or nothing perspective, right? Where when you have been yo-yoing for many years and haven't really been able to find a quote unquote plan that works for you, it is, I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is they, again, to use your example, just go from this belief that they can't to that they can without the steps, the learning, the process in between. And when they tell themselves they're going to get back on track, I don't think that they like really believe it, right? There's still like in the back of their mind, this kind of like, yeah, we've done this a million times and let ourselves down a million times. So like, there's not a true underlying belief. And so I appreciate how you're inviting our audience to bridge the gap and be the student by saying, I am learning to become the kind of person who does that. And that also takes on an identity tone, right? And so it gives the wiggle room to be imperfect, because there's one thing I know about habits is that you don't have to be perfect to build a new habit. You just have to be consistent enough over a long enough period of time. So if there has ever been a period of time where you have lost weight, kept it off, but then regained it, something changed, right? There was something in your habits that changed. Maybe the diet was too unsustainable. Maybe you went through a hardship in your life. Something rocked the boat and the habits kind of went out the window. And so this is how we know the habits weren't particularly solid to begin with, because habits are not that malleable. As we all know, habits, when they are true rock solid habits, are basically unshakable and to the point of being subconscious. But you have to do them long enough and consistently enough for them to become habits. And people have an extremely unrealistic timeline with what that looks like, because we've all heard the bullshit myth, 21 days, 3 weeks. Yeah, right. You're looking more at a year to 2 years when it comes to your eating, just having a habit-based program and working with a lot of clients and having some of them be overconfident and then circle back around because they realize, these are a little more shaky than I thought they were initially. So I just want to put that out there so you can adjust your expectations and be a little bit more realistic in your approach. You can plan on it taking minimum, I would say 9 to 12 months, but more likely closer to a year and a half to 2 years for things
particularly with eating. Like if you wanted to create a habit of journaling, for example, you could probably do that in, 3 to 6 months, maybe. If you very consistently showed up to do your journaling for 2 to 3 minutes a day, you would probably create a really strong habit of doing that. And then some days you journal more, some days less, but you do it. But eating, you have so many eating opportunities every single day until you die. There are so many opportunities to practice, to succeed, and to flop a little, and to flounder some. And so it's kind of a sliding scale. So when it comes to your eating, this in particular, these 30-day programs, even these 12-week programs really shit the bed, because I don't know why I'm obsessed with poop on this episode, but apparently I am. They do, because they put you in this box, and the human brain loves it. I can do anything for a short period of time. It sees the end. You're not worried about what happens at the end of the end, because like we're just in it to win it for the 30 days. But when that time is over and we believe this nonsense of 21 days to create a habit, then we're so disappointed by the fact that we want so much relief at the end of that 30 days. And the relief comes in the old, comfy, cozy identity that we've always had. So I love that you brought up 1 to 2 years, sometimes more, just depends for people, because it's not just, okay, no progress, no progress, no progress, no progress, no progress. Year 2, we're finally there. There are waves, and you're seeing a lot of success throughout that time. You're seeing a lot of changes throughout that time. But I think it really helps to hear that it's going to take that amount of time to start to change who you are and have it feel really solid. Because I never wanted somebody to come up and be like, okay, 2 years of work. I was in pain today. I needed to get smaller yesterday. I was tearing through my pants and stretching my jeans to their last dying thread today. I couldn't buy another size. I needed to change. So I understand the pain and frustration and the hope that a 21 to 30-day program gives. But I think people really need the breath of fresh air to say, hey, the reason this has been so hard and so frustrating for so long is because people have been lying to you. Like, they have given you an unrealistic view of what human behavior change looks like when you have so many eating opportunities throughout a day and throughout your lifetime. It just doesn't work that way.
Well, losing weight takes time, and keeping it off takes forever. So we have to be willing to find the right roadmap that we can sustain long term, and it doesn't feel like we're constantly climbing uphill. And if we're talking about an inside out approach where we're actually changing our identity, because yeah, if you grew up in a home, I mean, a lot of people didn't learn what healthy eating habits were. They didn't have that modeled for them. So I can't even tell you how many clients have joined Unstuffed and saying, I just didn't have good examples, or my parents weren't really home, or I was just kind of left to fend for myself as a latchkey kid. And so there wasn't really that structure or framework. So I don't really know what is normal or what is a quote unquote good eating habit. And especially in someone like your case, Steph, who's been dieting since you were in diapers, basically, like that's what you know, and you don't know anything different. And the beautiful thing about identity and working towards becoming that is it doesn't feel like a hardship, because it feels like someone that you want to become. So it's not a grind. Every meal isn't an obstacle. It's like, I'm eating this way because it aligns with my goals and my values, which is a different podcast. But I think that is something that is really powerful, is when you get very clear on your why, and not just the superficial why, but like the deep underlying reasons that don't really have to do with other people or our environment so much, but more about how we feel about ourselves and honoring that version of ourselves, reaching that potential. Then it feels good. We don't want to veer off and try something different. And so that's why I think we have such great results and success with our clients, is because they like the way that they feel through the process. And it's not all about weight loss, weight loss, weight loss, weight loss, right? It's really working towards a different identity. And that can be exciting. That can be fun, because there's aspects of ourselves that we don't always like. So we have an opportunity to shed that and create something new, something stronger, something better. So just want to remind our clients, or listeners, I should say, that, when it comes to habits, like I said a moment ago, you don't have to be perfect. I kind of see it as like an election. You don't have to have like a unanimous vote to win. You just have to win the majority. And so we don't have to win every meal. We don't have to win every week. We don't have to win every workout. But I think if you can show up over and over again, then obviously, over time, that will provide the evidence that you need, that we're on the right track, that things are changing. But the other mistake that we see so often is just people doing things way too extreme, way too unrealistic. And that's what creates the inconsistency. So we would be remiss if we didn't at least mention that. So Steph, what other thoughts would you like to add here before we wrap up today's show?
Just briefly, that everyone has probably either known someone or heard a story about someone who just changed one day, woke up and quit smoking, or, just decided to get out and run and never stopped, kind of thing. Like they just go run, not Forrest Gump style, y'all.
Forrest.
Don't be dramatic. I knew, Leslie. I could see it in your brain.
You walked right into that one.
I know I did. Anyway, yeah, not like that, y'all. Like just changed their life one day. They got tired of their own shit. The only reason that works is because they are able to have a big enough emotional charge behind that change and sustain it. And that is a very difficult way to try and do it, is to wish for and hope for a big enough emotional charge to plug into you and change who you are and who you believe yourself to be. So that's why we do it the way we do it. Like, shit, I hope all of you just wake up one day and be like, I'm different.
Well, the motivator is often something super painful or scary as shit. Like, I have been diagnosed with cancer, or like, you're never going to be able to have a child if you don't get your weight under control. Like these big, big emotional drivers.
Yep.
It's not like these people just spring out of bed without some strong incentive behind it, right?
Right. So, that's the wishful thinking way, is to just wake up a different person. Kind of like we always wish we'd wake up on Monday morning better and ready to take on the diet. We're going to have a new brain on Monday mornings. Doesn't happen that way. So let's do it the way that actually works, and put your vote in, to use your example, every day, over and over and over, to the best of your ability. And when you don't do it, then you work on it. And I'm a little biased, like I've said in the past, but that's what the program is for. That's what the community is for. That's what support is for. And if you can't do it that way, get community and get support, because so much of your identity is wrapped up in your circle. It is much harder to change when you are in a circle of people that mimic and mirror who you believe yourself to be.
Truth. And y'all, we are opening the doors to Unstuffed. We only do this twice a year. On Monday, April 22nd, they will only be open for 4 days. So we're temporarily accepting new clients. If this message resonates with you, if this is a skill that you want to learn, be sure to get on the interest list in the show notes. Zero obligation. We're not going to force anybody to join by joining that list. What it does is allow you to get information and access to exclusive bonuses specifically to our early birds. So that is it for us today. I hope you found today's episode helpful. Next week, we have a special client interview, so be sure and tune in for that one. And we will catch you next Tuesday. Have a great week.